and meet the men who are about to take the green flag in today's Daytona 500.
Motorweek Illustrated is brought to you by Purolator Filters. To some, it's routine maintenance. To others, it's an act of love. If you truly appreciate your car, you protect it with Purolator Automotive Filters. By Toyota Trucks, setting the standard for quality and value with a full line of two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive trucks. Who could ask for anything more? We make your car perform.
Good morning. We're live in the garage area at Daytona International Speedway. I'm Dave Despain. Special pre-Daytona 500 edition of Motorweek Illustrated. In just a few hours, it'll be white knuckle time out there on the racetrack. We all expect a lap. Area is here, where the men who build these 190-mile-per-hour race cars are giving them a final tune-up for their $1.5 million day's work. The drivers are all hidden away. They've been interviewed beyond any reasonable limit of patience for the last week, so we of the media give them a quiet moment on Sunday morning to prepare for their high-risk work that lies ahead. Well, you'll hear from all the stars today. You'll see all of the slam-bang action of this speed week, and we'll look at how the face of stock car racing has changed. New rules have affected the way these cars behave, and even the old veterans haven't figured out the answers to all of the questions, as we're going to see. In testing and practice, the drivers have checked out every inch of this 2.5-mile oval, but they're all trying to find one road, the road that leads to that little black and white checkerboard where only one man will drive today. That's Victory Lane, and our man there is Bob Barsh.
Thank you, Dave, and hello, everyone. My job in the next hour is basically going to be to try to maintain control over an all-star cast of stock car racing experts who will offer their perspective on the 30th Daytona Speed Weeks. Dick Berggren is editor of Stock Car Racing Magazine and a familiar face to ESPN NASCAR viewers. And Benny Phillips is an award-winning racing writer for North Carolina's High Point Enterprise. And high above the racetrack, let's go now to meet the men who will call this 30th running of the Daytona 500, starting with our Motorweek Illustrated executive producer, Ken Squire.
Well, thank you, Bob. There's a lot of new driving styles to be learned by those rookies for sure. And that's why I think many people have changed their opinion and give the Daytona 500 back to the veterans. Sure, Schrader and Allison, Davey are up in front, but it's Allison, Bobby, and Waltrip and Earnhardt and Petty and Yarborough further back in the field that I think are going to have the telling impact on Victory Lane when this one is over. Car parity, yep, I think we've got it, but driver parity, that's the big issue. And no one can speak to that better than the gentleman who'll be my colleague in the course of our flag-to-flag coverage later today of this Daytona 500. He's standing topside in this great new facility. Let's go to the two-time Grand National champion, Ned Jarrett.
Yes, Ken, the driver is very definitely back in the picture once again. And I think that was evidence when Bobby Allison won the 125-mile qualifying race as well as the 300-mile race on Saturday. His experience paid off. Drafting is very definitely back in play, and those that know how to do it, they have raced at the slower speeds like they're running today, and those are the drivers who are going to prevail. You might say that we've taken the sport back some 4 or 5 years, and those that ran in that era are going to do well.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. During the next hour, we'll also be bringing you our Motorcraft Garage reports. And standing by now is Motorweek Illustrated pit reporter Pat Pitts-Patterson.
For the past 3 years, this car, the number 9 Coors Ford of Bill Elliott, has been dominant here at Daytona. He's won the pole position, the prestigious pole, 3 times at Daytona. This year's qualifying effort was only a 6th place effort, and he starts 31st on the field. It's not been a good round of work here at Daytona for the Elliott car. Dave, chance to talk about that.
All of us at Motorweek have really got to liking those victory parties up at the Dawsonville Pool Hall. But if we're going to have a party this year, it's going to be because this guy worked his tail off. You broke, what, the transmission on Thursday?
Transmission broke, but, you know, that's part of it. You never know. That's why you go for the best qualifying speeds you can on Saturday or Sunday whenever we qualify to ensure you start for the 500. You know, and we did run good on Saturday, and at least we got a good start. You know, and had we had any kind of other little trouble, it could have put you way back in the 125s anyway. race. So, you know, let's face it, we're in a race, and we'll go from there.
You've always been, for the last 4 or 5 years, the dominant guy early, the fast guy in testing and qualifying, the guy everybody was shooting at. Does it feel differently going into this 500?
Well, no, because you look at other races, you know, this, of course, is the Daytona 500, but there's so many races in between that you're not the dominant factor, that you don't run up front, that something don't happen, and it's just another race. But still, yet, to us, it's the Daytona 500. We want to run as good as we can. You know, like I told somebody else, maybe it'll save some of the embarrassment of running today, but, you know, I just didn't feel like our car's been doing that good, but still, we'll work it out. We got some more motor stuff coming, and the main thing is we want to run good on Sunday and finish.
Well, he's going to have a lot of company back there in the back with the likes of Richard Petty and Cale Yarborough. Good luck, Bill.
Well, I know a lot of other guys have wanted it for the back. I'm going to be trying my best.
Bill Elliott.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Gentlemen, Bill Elliott seems at least as relaxed as I've ever seen him, which is unusual, I think, for a race as big as the Daytona 500. Benny, am I reading Bill right?
Yes, yesterday morning he ate a big breakfast, went out with 3 friends from Dawsonville, and played 9 holes of golf. Hardly anything could be more relaxing on the eve of a race than that.
Dick Bergen, you've seen a lot of these races. You've been through the garages. How about the whole Elliott team? I mean, they're a family, a unit, and they rise and fall on the emotions of each other. How are they shaping up as a team in this race?
I think they're calm. I think they're ready to do the thing, and I think they're ready to do very well today. But it has been a relaxed atmosphere, principally because I think they have not been the favorite. There hasn't been the kind of press pressure. Are you going to win the race? Do you expect to win the race? Well, no. Elliott is not the favorite, and not a lot of people do expect him to win, and that's actually easier.
Well, we certainly expect to see Elliott do well today, and speaking as a fellow Georgian, don't ever count them out of a battle. We'll be back to Daytona International Speedway for more of our live Motorweek Illustrated pre-500 coverage right here on ESPN, so stay with us.
I'm Duke. This is my car. These are my people. This is my cookie. And this is my oil filter. Purelated. Why purelated? Because they invented the oil filter, so they know how to make them right. And my people can learn from my noble example. Cookie, she don't care. She goes with me because I'm a legend.
You got your pure oil now, you got your pure oil later. Purelated oil filters.
Bob Strange, B.F. Goodrich test engineer.
After years of testing B.F. Goodrich tires, we've developed the all-weather Confiscated. It's a real performer in any kind of weather.
I believe the all-weather Confiscated is the best high-performance all-weather tire in the world. I mean all-weather.
B.F. Goodrich TAs, tested tough to make your car perform.
This is where champions begin.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Mike Tyson, Terrence Ali, Ray Boom Boom Mancini. Superstars who forge steel nerves and iron punches on Budweiser's top-ranked boxing. Watch live Friday night fights. Top Rank Boxing puts you in the ring where champions are made on ESPN.
A 4x4 that'll shift the balance of power in the truck world. Toyota's all-new V6 4x4. The most advanced V6 engine in any compact truck. Unsurpassed horsepower. More low-down torque than any compact V6 4x4. New V6. Now who's looking out for number 1?
Toyota.
With this standard intake manifold, a Winston stock car will run 210 miles an hour. That's too fast. With this restrictor plate to slow the cars down and keep them out of the grandstand, the cars are running down around 190. Everybody, like old Harry Hyde here, been trying to figure out how to get the speed back, and you figured it out the best, and you got the pole. But how come it was 15 years from the last time you got a pole till this time?
Well, when you get to pole at Daytona, David, they seem to pick on you pretty good to see why you run fast, so I don't put much effort into the pole. Kenny Schrader got the pole, I think. He found 3 or 4 tenths that I didn't know was there, so I have to give him credit for it. I didn't do much for it.
He says you did it all. When you talk about picking apart, you're talking about tech inspection. Are those NASCAR inspectors still your best friends?
Well, they're going to see what makes you run fast. That's for sure.
Harry Hyde built the pole-sitting car. We'll hear from the man who will drive it a little later.
Harry just won't take the credit for it. Speaking of restrictor plates, though, with all the talk down the big Winston Cup cars, hardly anybody has mentioned the restrictor plates being worn by the Busch Grand National machines. They'll be wearing restrictors this season, and in yesterday's Goodys 300, we found out that slowing the cars down doesn't necessarily mean making them safer. There were a lot of Winston Cup stars in the race, most of whom qualified in the back. Surprise pole sitter Mike Swaim led early as the Winston Cup guys tried to come through the traffic. Kenny Schrader was punted into the wall after working from deep in the field to take the lead, and as he rode it out, Neil Bonnet was tapped while trying to avoid the mess and then really got T-boned by Dale Shaw. I know you're wondering about Bonnet's leg. He was okay. Now watch Jeff Bodine in yellow and Darrell Waltrip right behind him doing a little 180-mile-an-hour minuet in heavy traffic, and traffic was really the story of this one. 24 cars, more than half the field, were involved in spins and wrecks. This 10-car pileup in turn 4 took a big bite out of the entry list, and 7 more were banged up when this freight train derailed. But this time, a hood flew into the crowd and hit 7 spectators. None of them were seriously injured. In fact, one cut-up fan said, quote, "It was worth it to see Bobby Allison win." And win Bobby Allison did. He charged past Jeff Bodine and then dove under Darrell Waltrip with a lap to go, and in a rush to the checkers, nobody could retaliate. And as you'll see in a moment, that was Bobby Allison's second big win of this 30th Daytona Speed Weeks. Now, we should also mention that L.D. Ottinger, a Busch Grand National driver, was hurt in that big 7-car pileup. He was taken to Halifax Medical Center with a suspected concussion, and it looks like he's going to be okay. Now let's go back to our Motorcraft Garage reports with Dave Despain.
Carburetor restrictors slowed the cars down so they all run together, and now the big technical focus is on these rear wings called spoilers. One of the reasons a lot of people think we see so many crashes is that the drivers want this spoiler laid down flat. That'll let the car go faster. Every driver wants to go fast. But when the spoiler's down flat, the rear end of the car tends to be loose. The effect of the wind pushing the car down, holding it on the racetrack is lost. It becomes a guessing game and a compromise. Flat spoiler, go fast, stand it up and be safe. We'll see what they decide at Daytona 500.
Okay, Dave. Dick Berkran, question for you. What did we learn from yesterday's Grand National race that we might carry over to today's Daytona 500?
Well, I think one of the things that we learned is that we could have a very, very competitive race today, Bob, with an awful lot of cars running in the front pack. Gee, yesterday with only 10 laps to go, there were a good dozen competitors all running nose to tail, and I think we could see that today.
Okay, thanks very much. Next up, we'll take a look at 2 of the most eventful 125-mile qualifiers in Daytona 500 history when we return to our Sunday morning edition of Motorweek Illustrated, live from Daytona Internet. Welcome back to our live Motorweek Illustrated pre-race coverage of the Daytona 500. I'm Bob Varsha, along with Benny Phillips and Dick Bergren here in our Purolator Victory Lane. You know, 2 of the great stories down here in Daytona wear the name Allison. One, 1987 Rookie of the Year Davey, has run up front all week long, only to be overshadowed by his father, Bobby, 2-time Daytona 500 winner who just turned 50 recently. Many people are picking Bobby Allison to win his 3rd 500 here. And for a Motorcraft Garage report on Allison's situation, let's go to Pat Patterson.
Well, it's a true fact that this may be the car that will go to Victory Lane today. It is Bobby Allison's car, a little bit different from last year. The windows are a little bit more rounded in the GM car, and the car itself is just a little bit longer. Allison had a great run on Thursday and won the qualifier here, and our Dave Despain talked with Bobby after the race.
Thursday's twin 125 qualifiers, great day for the veterans, guys with experience. You and Waltrip got out there and showed them the fast way around. What kind of race was it from your viewpoint?
Well, for me, it was a pretty good race. You know, I pitted early when we had a caution and took on a little splash of gas because I didn't think we could go all the way, and jumped back out there. And really, the way traffic went for me was pretty good. I was able to go under a few cars and around a few cars and have some gaps where I didn't get caught outside of a long line, and work my way back to the front, and things really went well.
Well, your old racing rival Richard Petty sure didn't have much fun out there. He's spinning and sliding down the backstretch, and he was stuck in the mud instead of racing you at the finish. And on the restart, nobody had a shot at you. You were there.
By then, I kind of thought so, yeah. I kind of looked to see where Bodine was, and obviously he was having problems back there in the pack, and I could see that that Schrader couldn't do anything with Rusty, and I knew Rusty couldn't do anything with Schrader. So I felt like that really, for once, I had him covered.
A lot of talk about last lap strategy here, and from what we've seen so far, the guy in front has got the inside track to the victory. That two-car draft just hasn't worked. Is that going to be the story on Sunday?
Well, I kind of think it may hold true on Sunday. What I'm hoping for is to have a 300 or 400 foot lead on the last lap, so I don't have to find out.
Final question now. We've got the old guard there in row 2 and the newcomers up there in front. Is this going to be a race for the Chargers or a race that experience will win?
Yeah.
Bobby Allison. He'll come from the second row.
Great to see Bobby Allison back in victory lane. You know, named ARCA racer Jay Summers as our Motorweek Racer of the Week. But after watching Bobby Allison all week long down here, the unanimous vote of the Motorweek staff is we've got to have a special weekend Racer of the Week. Give that honor to Bobby Allison, and we hope to see a lot more of him in today's race. Now, the second 125 qualifier offered further proof that the mysterious world of aerodynamics and race cars is often just that, a mystery.
A good one-word description of Thursday's second 125 qualifier might be shock. At the green flag, two-time 500 winner Bill Elliott pulled out of line with a broken transmission. The defending champion will start 31st in today's big race. On lap 3, there was shock of a different kind. J.D. McDuffie's Pontiac exploded in flames after a three-way tangle with Del McCowart and Ralph Jones. Everyone held their breath as McDuffie came to a stop on the infield and struggled to escape his charred race car. He was taken to the hospital with moderate burns on his hands and face. Now here's a slow-motion look at the aerodynamic effects of side-by-side racing. Cale Yarborough gets into the rough air under Darrell Waltrip, and the rear wheels break loose. Now watch the windshield as the force of the air literally sucks it from the car. The right side tires explode almost simultaneously, and Cale is into the wall. But the action is all behind him as 12 cars got caught up in a chain reaction crash that left the infield looking like a chop shop. The revelation of the race was Waltrip. Still looking for that first 500 win, Darrell showed he could run anywhere on the racetrack. On the last lap, he proved it by holding off first Davey Allison and then Dale Earnhardt. He looked like the Darrell Waltrip of old, and when Dave Despain talked to him afterward, he sounded like old Darrell too.
Well, new Papa Darrell Waltrip's little girl found her way to Daytona victory lane in a big hurry, didn't she?
Yeah, it's the first time she'd ever been here. First time at Daytona, and she says, gee, Dad, this is a piece of cake. How come you haven't been doing this all along?
You made the down payment on that young lady's college education out there Thursday.
Hey, I just say a little down payment. Sunday, I'm going to buy her I'm going to buy her MD and something, or MB, MS, whatever you call them.
Good luck to you, Darrell.
Thanks a lot.
He's been third 3 times in this race. Now he's going to try to win his first Daytona with 14 extra pounds of inspiration.
Good luck to Darrell Waltrip in today's 500. Benny Phillips, first Richard Petty, then Cale Yarborough with big spins out there on the high banks. That's a lot of years of experience. What's going on with those guys?
Sure, but Cale Yarborough's in a new model Oldsmobile. Petty's in a new model Pontiac, and I think they were trying to get every decimal of speed out of those new cars. Cale's spoiler was laid back almost flat. I think that was a factor in his spin, and Petty got caught in a dead spot in the draft.
So the draft remains. It's not a problem with the new body styles. It's just a matter of learning how to get the car set up for the racetrack.
I think it's some new adjusting. Some different things happened. Cale said that strange things were happening out there. He had never seen anything like it in all of his experience, all of his time here at Daytona.
Sounds like a racer after every spin. Well, we'll be back. The most compelling story on the off-track here at Daytona has certainly been Tim Richmond, and we'll have the latest chapter in his long saga when we come back to a live Sunday morning edition of Motorweek Illustrated at Daytona. Stay with us. And then subsequently passed the first new NASCAR drug test. 5 days after the announcement of Tim's initial failure, NASCAR still hadn't told the public exactly what they found in that first drug test. And they were insisting that Tim submit medical records of his serious illness last year when he had pneumonia before he could go race here at Daytona. On Thursday, NASCAR revealed that the drugs in question were a couple of over-the-counter cold remedies and pain relievers. And on Thursday, Tim Richmond went on the offensive.
Richmond and his lawyers met the press and charged NASCAR with mounting a smear campaign to sabotage his comeback.
There was a concerted effort to defame Mr. Richmond and deprive the fans of the right to see him drive in the Daytona 500. NASCAR finally, after Thursday's qualifying races in the evening, sat down and issued a release and told you folks that Tim Richmond did not have a prohibited illegal drug in his system, but had Sudafed and Advil, something that everybody in this room might at one time be guilty of having in their system.
Richmond says his flamboyant lifestyle and past criticism of NASCAR have made him a target, and he cites negative results from 2 independent drug tests to back it up.
I did not, and still do not trust NASCAR. The power within is too large for little Timmy Richmond or whoever out there to deal with up to this point.
Under threat of a lawsuit, Attorney Slotnick offered a solution.
We are making a final last-ditch effort. There is a possibility at 3:30 this afternoon you may see Tim in a car doing the final lap to qualify. At that point, it will be up to NASCAR.
Well, joining us now live here in our Pure Later Victory Lane at Daytona is NASCAR Director of Public Relations, Chip Williams. Chip, thanks for joining us.
Sure.
What is the status of Tim Richmond's situation, first vis-a-vis the Daytona 500 as of right now?
As of right now, we're still looking for the medical records, and Dr. Heimbaugh needs some kind of something to look at to see how the treatment and the recovery of the pneumonia has come. And at that point, if he's satisfied, then Tim will be approved to race. Until that happens, it's not going to happen.
Now, in the press conference yesterday, Tim's lawyer said that NASCAR had agreed that those medical records were no longer an issue, that they would accept a letter from Tim's treating doctor saying that he has not been treated for drug abuse in the past, that he is fit to go race. Is that not the case?
It's not. Our question is not drug abuse. Going back Wednesday a week ago is when we asked Tim for the medical records, or Dr. Heimbaugh did, wanted to know where he stood in his recovery and how the treatment had gone for the pneumonia, to see if Tim was able to run, physically able to run 190 miles an hour for 500 miles. On Thursday, of course, things got a little off track because of the urinalysis test. By Monday, he was back in a situation where his license was valid. We were still sitting there waiting for the medical records, and we've been waiting.
When was the first time that you asked Tim Richmond for his medical records?
First time Dr. Heimbaugh asked was Wednesday a week ago, the Wednesday prior to the Busch clash. On January 26th, Bill France Jr., our president, and Les Richter, vice president for competition, told him that they thought that Dr. Heimbaugh would probably ask for that because he wanted to know how the pneumonia was coming.
We should point out here Dr. Heimbaugh is NASCAR's medical director.
He is the track physician here.
Chip, why did it take so long for the announcement of the Advil and the Sudafed being the drugs in question to be announced?
We didn't want to say anything until we knew exactly what the drug was. Exactly what the drug was. We knew there was a prohibited substance, and there was a violation of the substance abuse policy. However, we didn't know exactly what it was, and until we could pinpoint it, we weren't going to release it publicly.
Briefly, we've only got a short time. Is NASCAR trying to keep Tim Richmond out of stock car racing?
Not at all. From what I can see, Tim Richmond's trying to keep Tim Richmond out of stock car racing.
Okay, Chip Williams, NASCAR Director of PR, thanks very much for being with us. This has been a rough spent week for the all-time king of the 500, 7-time Daytona 500 winner Richard Petty, and Pat Patterson now has more on the king.
7 times Richard Petty has gone to victory lane here at Daytona. He's always been a hot runner at Daytona. But earlier this week in the twin qualifying races, here of his car, and he spun during the qualifying races. That will start him 34th on the grid today. A long way to go for the king of racing, and our Dave Desping talked with Richard about it.
One of the most spectacular runs I've ever seen at Daytona was when Richard Petty went from 31st to 1st at about the first 100 miles of the race and then stuck her in the fence. You're going to be starting back there in the back 40 again in this race. What do you worry about in the first 100 miles?
Well, you worry more about what other people are doing than what you do. You figure that there's a lot of cars in front of you that's not really supposed to be there. So, you know, speed-wise and driver-wise and stuff like this. So there's 5 or 6 pretty good cars starting in the back, and they've got to work their way through those particular cars before they can get with the good ones up front. So that's your main work.
Early in the restrictor discussion, you said slower cars drafting together was more dangerous than fast cars. Given what happened in the 125 races, you still feel that way?
Well, you know, I feel that way. You know, my car got airborne in one of the races, and Keel's car got airborne. It's just a situation that looking at this race and looking at the race we had last year and the year before, then we went the wrong way with the carburetor rules, even though they slowed them down to 15 or 20 mile line.
You waved all those guys when you go by them on Sunday, okay?
Well, I'm going to be trying, that's for sure.
Richard Petty, the most spectacular race I've ever seen him drive here was a year he finished second, and that's the subject of Ken Squire's Quaker State Scrapbook.
Daytona Beach, Florida. Despite a glittering entry list, the final laps of the Daytona 500 came down to a battle between racing's biggest rivals, Richard Petty and his number 43 Dodge, and the Wood Brothers Mercury number 21 of David Pearson. With 1 lap to go, Petty led first, then Pearson. As more than 100,000 spectators came to their feet, Petty tried to pass out of turn 4. The 2 cars touched, and both crashed into the outside wall. Petty spun to a stop on the infield and stalled just yards from the finish. But Pearson kept his engine alive, and as the stunned crowd watched, his crippled Mercury staggered to the checkered flag. David Pearson had won the 1976 Daytona 500 in the wildest finish ever.
Today, Richard Petty prepares for his 31st season of Winston Cup racing, while David Pearson helps prepare the next generation of driving stars, managing a team for his son Larry. I'm Ken Squire. Join me next week for another look into my Quaker State Scrapbook. Count on great finishes at the world's greatest stock car race, and we'll be back to live Motor Week at Daytona International Speedway after this.
Motorweek Illustrated is being brought to you by Fram, Bendix, and Autolite, which are all quality products of Allied Signal. Quaker State, the big Q stands for quality, always has, always will. And by Budweiser, proud sponsor of the 1988 U.S. Olympic team. This Bud's for you.
Welcome back to our live Sunday edition of Motorweek Illustrated in the Pure Later Victory Lane at Daytona International Speedway. I'm Bob Barsha, and this will certainly be the most covered Daytona 500 in history. In addition to the live CBS network broadcast, there are writers and photographers here from all over the world. Right now, we'd like to get a little added perspective from some of those writers, and who better to expand our little circle of reportage than National Speed Sport News editor and publisher Chris Economaki.
In town for the important Daytona 500 are 2 very important newspaper people. Beth Tushak, who covers for the Detroit News, where the Motown manufacturers pay close attention to every word she writes, and from the Atlanta Journal, Ed Hinton, in the heart of southeastern stock car country. Beth, what are we going to see on the track today?
Chris, I think we're going to see a lot of straight line running. I think there could be some drafting by the more powerful cars. And unfortunately, I think there is an incident because of the closeness of the racing. It will involve more than one car.
All right, Ed Hinton, how do you see today's 500?
I think we're going to see inexperienced show more than usual, Chris. I think that the squirrely, unusual kind of drafting that seems to be taking place here is going to show, and it's no place for a rookie to be, or even a second or third year man who isn't very sharp. The veterans who know how to handle unusual situations with the turbulence coming off the cars are going to come to the front, and the other guys are going to get kicked to the back when they try to pull out a line, and their mistakes are going to show. They're going to get squirrely, they're going to spin, they may crash.
Okay, Beth, I'm sure you have decided on who you think is going to win.
Boy, I sure like the Alabama gang, and if he can keep his wheels on this year, I'll go with Davey Allison.
Okay, very positive. Ed Hinton, your winner?
I think Beth's close. I think Davey's dad. Here's a guy who, again, as I said, the drafting is going to be unusual. There's going to be turbulence. Here's a guy who's driven Indy cars before, who understands what happens when the draft actually upsets a car rather than making it more comfortable. And his vast experience on these big tracks is going to show. Plus, he seems to have the fastest car in the field anyway, and it's certainly a car capable of bringing him home.
Well, there's been a late development. Davey Allison, the front row starter, in the last few minutes of practice yesterday after the Goodys 300, hit the wall and damaged the right side of his Ford Thunderbird. They worked on the car all night to make it right, but they'll not know how it handles until the green flag drops. Now, Beth Tushak picks the Alabama gang. Davey Allison, Ed Hinton picks his father, Bobby Allison, and I'm afraid, Beth, I got to agree with Ed Hinton. Bobby Allison's going to win the Daytona 500 today. And now to my colleague, Bob Varsha.
Okay, thank you, Chris. A lot of people sharing that suggestion this weekend. New Yorker Jeff Bodine, a past 500 winner, and Midwesterners Rusty Wallace and Kenny Schrader are really battling the historical odds this weekend. Sure, some guys from outside the Southeast have won the race before, but Spanaway, Washington? Let's go down to Dave Despain, who talked with one of the real geographical long shots in today's race.
Southeastern drivers have always dominated in stock car racing. West Coast drivers have had a particularly difficult time making it down in this part of the country. This guy is going to be the latest to give it a shot. Derrick Cope, former West Coast Rookie of the Year. Why do the West Coast drivers have such a hard time down here?
Well, Dave, I think it's just the fact that it costs so much money nowadays. I think that right now the West Coast drivers haven't been able to come up with the kind of major funding that it takes to run all the races back here. And, we've been fortunate enough to have, to done that this year. That
new sponsor is going to let you run the whole campaign, but you've had to move back to North Carolina to do that. Is that all right with you? You like this part of the country?
Oh, I love Charlotte. I moved there in November, and we're tickled to death with the area. And fortunately, with Purelator filters involved and Jim Test out of Kings Mountain, North Carolina, we have enough funding to go the whole year this year.
Last year, in your first 500, you started 23rd. This year, you start 22nd. You're headed the right direction.
Definitely. I just hope it don't take 22 years to get to the pole.
All right, Derrick Cope trying to win one for the West Coast ranks here in the Daytona 500.
Thanks, Dave. I don't think it's going to take Derrick Cope that long. We'll be back to our Motorweek Illustrated special live from Victory Lane at Daytona right after this. This is Motorweek Illustrated live here on ESPN. I'm Bob Varsha along with Benny Phillips and Dick Berggren in the Purelator Victory Lane at Daytona International Speedway. Now, after a dismal week trying to get his car into today's 500, Bill Elliott managed to salvage a little bit of pride and a shot at a whole lot of money by winning the first round of the International Race of Champions here at Daytona International Speedway earlier this week. Now, we'd like to show you exactly what happened in that race, but network problems forbid us from doing that, so you can watch for that show on your ABC network station sometime on June 24th. Now, the NASCAR stars, as expected, swept the top three positions in that race. After all, this is Daytona International Speedway. Dale Earnhardt finished second and Terry Labonte third. IROC provided Dale with his third straight top two finish of the week here at Daytona. And let's go now to Pat Patterson for a Motorcraft Garage report on the number 3 car.
Nobody spent more time up front here in the past week than Dale Earnhardt. The car right behind me today also was the car that won the Busch Clash a week ago. Earnhardt looks for a good run here today at Daytona, and our Dave Despain had an opportunity to talk to Dale.
Some other people have been making some headlines down here this week, but when they put the cars out on the racetrack, Dale Earnhardt is the guy making the headlines. I want to ask you about last lap strategy. You led and won in the Busch Clash. You didn't lead and you didn't win in the 125. Serious question. On Sunday, where do you have to be?
Well, I was trying to get to the front today, and it didn't work, but, it's really hard to say. It's going to depend on who's running where and what situation is on the last lap. I would have thought Davey, after running second to me on the Busch Clash, would have passed Darrell earlier in the race and tried to lead it and do the same things I did. Darrell ended up winning the race. So I don't know, Dave. It's an iffy question because you don't know who's going to be behind you and who's going to help and who's not. When Davey and Davey was trying to get by Darrell, I seen Darrell going to shut Davey off, so I went to the outside and didn't help Davey any, but it didn't hurt him because he had to shut off anyway. And it depends on the situation. I can help if you're behind, but you can't help if you get shut off. So you just got to pretty much it's every man for himself.
Time you won one of these things, don't you think?
The 500, sure, they owe me.
Good luck to you.
All right.
Dale Earnhardt.
Dale, do you see a lot?
Well, the motivation for some of those great last lap moves is proportional, we find, to the size of the purse, and the Clash is a good example. In last Sunday's Busch Clash, Davey Allison was all over Dale Earnhardt down the final trip on the backstretch with Papa Bobby Allison lurking in third, but Dale managed to hold him off and win $50,000. But there was another $30,000 in lap leader money on the line, and Dave Despain found it hard to believe that Earnhardt actually split some of that money with Rusty Wallace.
I ask you, Rusty Wallace, did you really make an extra 12.5 in the Busch Clash, or is that just press hype?
No, it's 7,500. I thought I led to Earnhardt past the 5th lap in the 10th lap, and it turned out to be I only pushed him past the 10th, so it's only 75 right now.
But he did split the money with you.
Oh, yeah, that's what you call working together. I pushed him through, you know, him and I hooked up, and that was a plan.
Are you going to make a deal with somebody for the Daytona 500?
There's too many people in a Daytona 500, you know, and
Rusty says
there's not, you know, there was just big money up for the Busch Clash, and there was a good chance that Dale and I, with the position we had, we could hook up on the start and go on, and that's the reason we did that. But no, we won't make any deals for the 500.
Seriously, a lot of people say it's going to take a drafting partner to win this race. It's going to take 2 cars to pass 1. Do you buy that?
Yeah, it sure is, and it's going to take 3 cars to drive off from the rest of them. We found that out today. If 3 of us can get hooked up, then we can go like crazy, but just 2 of them doesn't seem to get the job done. But it's definitely going to be a deal where the drivers are going to have to work with each other real hard, and if they got any problems with the other drivers, they're going to have to leave them by the wayside, because it's going to take that many to get going.
Rusty will be starting in row 3 with his best shot ever at the Daytona 500.
Well, this business of splitting lap money, Benny Phillips, Dick Berggren, is it just me, or, I mean, I know lap money is an old tradition in stock car racing. I mean, it's kind of like John McEnroe. How do you guys feel about it,
I think it's a matter of ethics. I think a lot of the other competitors would look at it that way, too.
Well, in addition to the money and lap money, we also find out there's a lot of money just involved in being a part of this race. Now, Mike Waltrip crashed his car in the 125, then went out and bought Jim Sauter's ride in the 24th spot on the grid, I think. Dick, I understand they paid $30,000 for that ride. Now, that might be the best example of just how valuable a spot in this Daytona 500 is.
Yeah, and getting into this program is a big deal. They're down here with a brand new sponsor. It's extremely important. This is the biggest stock car race of the whole year. They've just got to be here. Sauter's a part-time competitor. It's nice. He'd like to be in the program, but not as badly as Mike Waltrip needs to be in this program.
A lot of big money sponsorships in NASCAR now. A lot of those teams might find themselves without cars in the race, particularly when we get to the short tracks when they may only run 26, 28 cars. I understand there's a rumor going around that NASCAR may be asked to expand those fields a little bit to accommodate all these big sponsorships.
I'd love to see him run a consolation race.
There's almost 38 teams, I think, going for the championship. That's a lot of cars.
And it's going to be competitive.
And we'll be a lot of people going home.
In fact, we'll be back to Motorweek Illustrated on ESPN. Stay right there. Ticket for this race is sold out earlier than ever. You also can't get a hotel room. Believe me, I've been sleeping on a couch for 3 days down here on the world's most famous beach. But some folks will do anything to be a part of Speed Weeks, and there was track action going on all weekend long. Let's take a look at a little bit of it now. The Daytona Charlotte Dash Series. In Friday's race, defending champ Larry Caudle found himself in a 10-lap door-banging battle of the checkered flag with his ex-teammate, 22-year-old Karen Schultz. Now, Schultz was driving Caudle's 87 title-winning car. Those two don't like each other. They got into the door-to-door action, though Caudle managed to hold Schultz at bay for the 2nd year in a row. A 2-3 female finish by Schultz and former truck racer Shawna Robinson was a NASCAR first. Now let's go down to the garage area for another of our Motorcraft Garage Reports with Pat Patterson.
It's been a crazy week in the garage area for everybody that hadn't had a chance to be here. A lot of Bondo. And earlier, the Pontiacs had to have the deck lids cut off because they were 2 inches long. Now, the Pontiac's a 2+2, and we figured this out to be the Pontiac became a 2+2-2. That's Richard Petty, Brad Teague, and Mike Waltrip. So a lot of Bondo work in the garage area this week.
Those Pontiacs were a big story throughout this Daytona 500. What do you guys think? I mean, these guys are the most professional racers in the world. To come here and have a car that doesn't fit the template, it's got to be a little bit embarrassing. Benny Phillips, how about it?
Well, I don't know. Is that what we're looking at, or is that the real thing? There's oftentimes people have come to Daytona like, you remember when Petty came here with a golf ball roof on his car? That wasn't really what he was trying to get by with. Is this what's happening now?
They're saying they had one legal car and one car maybe a little bit less legal. We're going to go back to the pits right now and Pat Patterson.
Kenny Schrader's on the pole here today for the 30th annual Daytona 500. Obviously, you're excited. What kind of race will
Well, we are awful excited. You know, it's our first race with this team, and I think going to see a heck of a race. As the track's been getting a little slicker through the week, we're starting to see more passing. We saw a lot of passing yesterday in the sportsman race, so I think you're going to see 20 cars up there, and they all want to lead it.
You got to go with somebody to pass, Kenny. That's been the word everybody said. You got to have a buddy system out here today. Do you think that's the way it's going to work?
Well, it pretty much looks like that. It's the way it's been all week. You know, everybody pretty much knows who their buddies are, they think. And I think you're going to find out today that maybe your buddies ain't always your buddies.
Well, we wish you a lot of luck. Have a great race today. Let's go back now to Bob Varsha.
Thanks, Pat, and we'll be back to meet the guy who will share the front row with Kenny Schrader in the Daytona 500. 500 was young rookie Davey Allison, who made his debut on this big track in fine fashion. But now the former Rookie of the Year is having a few problems and a tough speed weeks, the kind that makes the veterans wince. Let's go to another of our Motorcraft Garage reports now with Pat Patterson.
The tire story here at Daytona will be a big one today. The Goodyears versus the Hoosiers. We'll have to wait till it's all over to find out. But it will be an interesting story as some drivers have gotten behind the Hoosier program. We'll see as the day goes on whether or not Hoosier lasts as long as Goodyear or vice versa. Now we're going to take a look at a Davey Allison story.
Last year, the big surprise of the Daytona 500 was Davey Allison, the rookie kid sitting on the outside of row one. You know what? He's right back there again this year. What's different about Daytona 1988?
Well, our whole team is a year wiser now, Dave, and we're really glad that we came back and sat on the outside pole again this year, especially with the new restrictor rule. But I guess the biggest difference is that we just have that extra year of experience under us now.
There's all the talk about the Fords, that the restrictors hurt the Fords more than anybody else. Elliott's had trouble all along. You've kind of become the leader of the Ford guard down here. Is your car as strong as everybody else out there?
Well, right now it seems that at least the Chevrolet portion of the General Motors cars are stronger than we are, because they've beat us twice now. Well, actually 3 times, once in qualifying and then the Busch Clash and now in the 125. But we're not giving up. We're going to keep working hard, and I think we've got a car that's capable of winning the Daytona 500.
How much of those victories has been the difference in the cars, and how much of it's been the last lap driving styles?
Well, I think probably of the 2 races, the biggest thing that's beat me has been experience.
You're getting more experience, though, all the time. Have you figured out, if it comes down to that last lap shootout again, what you're going to have to do differently to win the 500?
Well, I think that if it was the Daytona 500, I might have done something to take a few more chances at the end of the race, because when it's the last lap, you got to do whatever it takes in the 500, not in a Busch Clash or in a qualifying race.
One of the keys to experience is knowing when to take the big chance. Go get him, Davey.
Thank you.
A moment ago, Chris Economaki mentioned that Davey Allison suffered a practice crash late yesterday. Dick Berggren, I think you can update that story for us.
Yeah, he damaged the car pretty badly, actually, Bob. The frame was bent a full inch, and they had to take the suspension components off their backup car and put them all on the race car. So when the green flag drops today, Davey Allison will be in what is effectively a brand new race car, 0 laps on it.
Well, we're certainly going to have to keep an eye on him throughout the day, and we'll be back to our live Motorweek pre-Daytona coverage from Daytona International Speedway. Motorweek Illustrated in a special 1-hour edition from Daytona International Speedway, and regular Motorweek viewers know that each week we like to give out a special Hidden Hero Award. In our efforts to find a meaningful winner for our weekly Hidden Hero, our Motorweek cameras found the people who do all the sewing on of all those driver patches you see all over the uniforms. Now, if you don't think that's important, keep in mind that there are tens and even hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of sponsorship and advertising exposure at stake. After working for 2 solid weeks here in the back of the NASCAR tech shed, these folks will have worked their way through 5,000 patches of every shape and kind. So let's take our hats off to the people who do all that sewing. Ken Corley, Sherry Melvin, and Jerry Frederick. You are our Fram Oil Filters Hidden Heroes for this Daytona Speed Weeks. Now, before we leave Daytona, we wouldn't have a complete show, of course, without predictions. We've heard a few already, and we've spared no expense to poll the brightest minds in the stock car racing biz to get you the latest word on who's going to win today's race. To get our consensus, let's start with the ultimate guru of Go Fast, Tar Heel Johnny Hayes.
Well, when Motorweek's Johnny the Tar Heel tried to pick the sports car winners at the 24 Hours of Daytona, he wore a funny hat that sucked everything he knew right out of his brain, and he wore sunglasses because his predictions wouldn't stand the light of day. Get those things off. You're in your own element now. You actually know a little about what you're talking about here at the stock car races. Get your stock car cap on and make me some predictions. I hear you're on a roll.
Well, I'm off to a good start. In the first race, I picked Bobby Allison, the greatest drafter that ever lived, and Bobby went out and proved how intelligent Johnny the Tar Heel is. Then the second race, I said the smartest race car driver in NASCAR will win this one. And darn if Darrell Waltrip didn't go out and prove Johnny Tar Heel is truly an expert. So I'm on to something.
All right, but that's Thursday, that's heat races, that's history. Make me a serious prediction for the Daytona 500.
Well, the cars have slowed down. The restrictor plate has got them where these old-timers are feeling real comfortable in those cars. And experience is key now. They know when to stay in line in the draft. They know who to go with, when to choose their pit stops. Experience is critical. However, there's a lot of young kids out here that not worried about experience. They're just going for it, and they might mess up a few of these old guys. My prediction is there's been a young kid here that's been outsmarted twice because of his inexperience. He lost right at the last of the Busch clash because he couldn't get around Dale Earnhardt. He lost again because Darrell Waltrip was able to hold him off in the 125s. I think now we have us a very experienced fellow that's going to win the Daytona 500. And his name is Davey Allison.
You got it from the horse's mouth, ladies and gentlemen. The winner of the greatest stock car race in history will be Davey Allison.
All right, another vote for Davey. Benny Phillips, star reporter for the High Point Enterprise. Who's your pick to win the Daytona 500?
Either Dale Earnhardt or Bobby Allison. I'll go with Earnhardt.
Oh, man, hedging his bets. Okay, Dick Berggren, editor of Stock Car Racing Magazine. Who's your pick?
I like Bobby Allison. He's got momentum going for him. He's won 2 races here.
All right, we certainly need to hear from our Motorcraft Garage reporter, Pat Patterson, who's been in the pits all day for us. Pat, who do you like in today's race?
Well, I'll tell you, my heart goes out to all of the youth and people that are out there and the younger drivers, but my head tells me if I'm going to make a bet, I better bet on a veteran that knows a lot about drafting. It's the excitement in the garage area that I'm loving right now. It's the Super Bowl of motorsports, and we're having a great time. Thanks for being with us.
Well, I'd like to leave you with some pit notes. There will be 20 cars in the lead draft all day. At least a dozen cars are capable of winning the race, and this could be the most competitive 500 ever. I wrote those notes in 1973, and Richard Petty went out and won the race by 2 laps. I learned a little about being a more skeptical reporter. I've seen those same predictions every year since. I don't even write them down anymore. But you know what? This year I believe it. Several things that we've talked about in the last hour: restrictors, aerodynamics, big sponsors, age and experience, youth and enthusiasm have all come together in history, and I think Dale Earnhardt will win it. Bob?
Okay, thank you, Dave. Thus far, I make the vote totals: 3 for Davey Allison, 3 for Dale Earnhardt, 2 for Bobby Allison, and a half a vote, I guess, for Darrell Waltrip on the base of what you said, Benny. The upcoming Daytona 500, we're coming down to the end of our show. We need to summarize. I'm going to ask each of you for the one single factor that you think is going to be overriding. At the top of our show, Ned Jarrett said he thought it was going to be the driver as opposed to the race car. Benny Phillips, what's your feeling?
The driver who best can pass on the outside in turns 1 and 3.
How about you, Dick?
I'll certainly go along with that. Passing is very, very difficult. The cars tend to get quite unstable here in passing, and being able to hang on to the car is very important. Very important also will be luck. Where are you when the crashes happen? Where are you when the motor blows up? Will the motor blow up in front of you or behind you? It's going to be an exciting race, no question about it. I can't wait for this one.
Do we think this is going to be one of those classic Daytona 500s with new body styles versus the old race cars? Do you expect this is going to be one of the great races, Dick?
It has all the potential for that. We've got lots of things going on here, Bob. We've got new teams. We've got the new body styles. We've got the carburetor restrictors that are slowing the cars down. I mean, absolutely anything could happen here. I'd like to pick 20 guys to win.
Thanks, Dick. I got to break in. I get the last word on Dave Despain. I'm going to say Dale Earnhardt is going to run the race. We hope you'll watch us this Wednesday night for the full story on the Daytona 500. For all of us here at Motorweek, Dave Despain and all the gang, I'm Bob Varsha. So long, everyone.
You protected with Purelator automotive filters. By BF Goodrich TA radials, we make your car perform. And by Fram, Bendix, and Autolite, which are all quality products of Allied Signal.